Philippians 2:12, when Paul finished writing that passage about Jesus' death, obedience, he follows up with Jesus' glory now in heaven, and that eventually every knee will bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, because Jesus Christ is Lord of all creation. He is ruler. And then in verse 12 he says, "So then, my dear friends, just as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now even more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is working in you, enabling you both to desire and to work out his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling and arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God who are faultless in a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shall shine like stars in the world. Hold firmly to the message of life. Then I can boast in the day of Christ that I didn't run or labor in vain for nothing. But even if I am poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I am glad and I rejoice with all of you. In the same way, you should also be glad and rejoice with me. Now I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, so that I may be encouraged when I hear news about you. For I have no one else like-minded who will genuinely care about your interests. All seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. I know his proven character because he has served with me in the gospel ministry like a son with a father. Therefore I hope to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. I am convinced in the Lord that I myself will also come quickly. But I consider it necessary to send you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, as well as your messenger and minister to my need, since he has been longing for all of you and was distressed because you heard he was sick. Indeed, he was so sick he nearly died. However, God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but also on me, so that I would not have one more grief on top of another. For this reason I am very eager to send him to you, so that you may rejoice when you see him again, and I may be less anxious. Therefore, welcome him in the Lord with all joy, and hold men like him in honor, because he came close to death for the work of Christ, risking his life to make up what was lacking in your ministry to me. That's verses 12 through 30. So we see here, Paul wrote in verse 29 and 28, for this reason I am very eager to send him, so that you may rejoice when you see him again, and I may be less anxious. So we know Paul was anxious. We know he had moments of wrestling, and he experienced anxiety. And how reasonable is that? He's pouring his life out as a living sacrifice to give the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ to other people. And not only is he doing this out of obedience to Jesus, but he knows that each person he ministers to should likewise walk in obedience to Jesus. It is not his load alone to carry. Jesus wants everyone to carry the load. He says, my dear friends, my dearly beloved. These people are very close to Paul's heart. Paul loves the Philippian Christian community, the believers there. He loves them dearly. He loves them like a father loves his children. He cares deeply about them. He's writing them to this to all of them, not just to individuals. So he says, just as you have obeyed, not only in my presence, but now even more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. This is not individually. He's not saying you each individually work out your salvation. He's saying as a group. And what's the word salvation comes from the Latin word salve, which means healing and preservation. So it's not that they have to work out. I can't work out my own salvation. Jesus Christ has done that. What he's talking about is working together to building each other up in unity and maturity as God purposes. With fear and trembling, and it means with humility and humbleness of mind. Reverence for God, knowing God is supreme, and he has you in his hands. He has your life in his hands, literally. For it is God who is working in you, enabling you both to desire and to work out his good purpose. God's working in each one of us. His will be done, but we need to be following his will. He gave us free will. See, Paul addresses this. We need to desire. God puts a desire in us, but we have to also feed that desire. And we have to work on desiring him more and more. It's not all up to God. It's up to my freedom of will to choose him and to desire to grow and to mature because of everything Jesus did. Jesus desired to be fully obedient to his Father. Paul is saying you all need to be desiring to be fully obedient to the Father, because there is a purpose in life, and that is to follow God so that we can enjoy heaven and fellowship with him in all of eternity, not just here and now. There's been a red bag in our house for months, years, and that red bag had a very good purpose. And every week Ed would check the contents of that red bag to make sure it was ready to take with him. And last week, he took that red bag and he emptied it. And he put 2 aprons in the wash. They weren't used, they were still clean, but they'd been sitting in that bag for 6 months, waiting. That bag also had potato peelers, yellow gloves, first aid kit, paraphernalia to be ready for the Wednesday night dinner crew. 6 months ago, he and Lloyd served what they did not know would be the last meal for who knows how long, 6 months. That was a weekly commitment, a weekly sacrifice of serving that community dinner for 12 years. And they did not know how long it would continue. But it was a weekly service, and it was a love and a dedication, a one way of honoring and serving God, the hands and feet of Jesus, to the people who were hungry, people who needed community, maybe not hungry, but needed to be able to be with other people for one evening in a safe place, in a welcoming place. 6 months later, I had emptied that bag. And as I was washing those aprons yesterday and drying them, I thought, we don't know what tomorrow holds. That last Wednesday night, I had no clue that it would be 6 months, a year, who knows. The odds are it will never be again like it was. Things change overnight. We make plans, but God knows how they will come out. And so it needs to be our desire to always make plans knowing that God has a purpose for us. And God will bring about his purpose for us if we yield to him. We do not know what the future holds, but God does. He says, do everything without grumbling and arguing. so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God who are faultless in a crooked and perverted generation, among whom you shall shine like stars in the world. In that one verse, God set the moon and the stars to rule the night in Psalm 136, and now he's telling us, be like stars. Stars rule the night. If you've ever been out in the desert country or an area where there's not much light pollution, the stars literally give light enough to walk by. And this is what he calls us to be, like stars shining in this dark world, a world of crooked and perverted generation. Perverted meaning they've lost their moral way, the intellectual way of morality. They have gone their own way. It's crooked, it's perverse, and we are living in a time of great perversity and crookedness. I am appalled now at common movies and entertainment that is acceptable that in the 60s would not have been allowed at all, period. And now it is acceptable, and it is on media where children can easily access it, and families are watching it. The language, the actions, the violence, the nakedness, perversion. We are in a perverted time. He calls us to a character of simplicity, purity, blamelessness. That is not easy. Only by God's help. Only through obedience to God. Living for Him. So we can shine as stars in this darkness. And he sends Timothy and Epaphroditus back because he knows that they are true in obedience. And they have the love that Paul has for the Philippians, to take courage and encouragement, to being there for each other. Being there for each other is very important, isn't it? And it's not easy right now. Social regulations, mandated regulations. We are not encouraged to be together, and yet God knows how important it is. He created us for relationship. He created us for unity. He created us to worship and praise and encourage and be together, physically together, just as Paul sent Timothy and Epaphroditus to be physically present. God knows how important it is to be physically present. I encourage each of us to pray and figure out ways to be there. Even if we can't physically be there, in close proximity, how can we reach out to people, to our neighbors, to people around us that are hurting? To shine as lights in this dark and perverted, crooked world. In obedience, out of love to Jesus and the work that He did on the cross. How we need Him, how we need God's will to be done. So I encourage you to shine as stars this week.